Welcome to Life Epistles. Today we will continue with the topic, death, what happens before, during, and after. This is actually the part 2, and we will be talking about the signs of death. What are we going to look at? We will talk about the forms of death. What happens to the physical and spiritual bodies when a person is dying? How should the living take care of the dying person? What conditions should prevail in the room or area at that critical moment? And what happens to the dead in the inner worlds? We'll provide the answers. Stay with us. We will begin with a summary of part 1. Under episode 16, we talked about what is death, why the fear of death, belief systems of classes of people, and the theories of life and death. We mentioned that there is the monistic and dualistic classes of people, each with its own beliefs. We also talked about the materialistic, moralist, and atheist concept about life after death. We examined the scientific theory, the theory of the theologian, and the theory of rebirth. We justified why the theory of rebirth sounds more logical and how it can be proven by individuals who are trained spiritually to know that the theory of rebirth is a fact of life. For the avoidance of doubt, we want to make the distinction that rebirth is not the same as reincarnation. Reincarnation is an Eastern terminology that does not reflect rebirth as taught under the Western wisdom teachings. We refer you to lecture number 10, where we talk about the difference between Western esoteric Christianity and Eastern teachings. Our source of information for this lecture is the Western wisdom teachings. It is important we inform you in advance that there are some repetitions in this presentation, and we do so for the purpose of emphasis. My name is Seddoh Bokor. We also want to make it clear that in this presentation, there will be some descriptions, and those descriptions may touch your sensibility. Please bear with us. Having said so, let us begin. We have made it known in our previous presentations that there are 7 worlds, from the world of God to the physical world. And human beings have bodies or vehicles that connect to each of these 7 worlds. At the moment, the evolution of humanity is being carried out in only 3 of the 7 worlds. It is the spirit, differentiated in God, that is making the journey to become God-like, to become a creative intelligence, that is 1, and also to add value to the Godhead, that is 2. We show this by this depiction. The ones in the Greek colored shows the various worlds in which the spirit is journeying consciously at the moment, or the 3 worlds in which the evolution of the spirit is being carried out. The physical one, the desire one, and the world of thought. Those are the 3 worlds in which the evolution of humanity is being done at the moment. It means there are 4 other worlds that are not being used at this moment. When we work in any of these worlds, and the world comes to an end, the spirit drops the body that it is using and progresses to the next world. It uses the next appropriate body in that world. The mind is the last of the material bodies that the spirit is using, and it comes after the spirit has dropped the dense body, the vital body, and the desire body. It is the spirit that lives, and the spirit is deathless, just like God himself. But in the journey to become like God, the spirit has to go through experiences, gathering a lot of experiences in the various worlds, just as a person will have to go through lessons and schools in order to become a professor. So every human being is a reflection of God, and God is spirit. But the various worlds in which the spirit journeys may be seen as the crystallized bodies to afford the differentiated spirits the needed environment to develop. What are the forms of death? Since the spirit is making journey through the various worlds and it drops bodies pertaining to each of these worlds, what then do we mean when we talk about death, and what are the forms? There are various forms of death: natural death, death through accidents, or suicide, among others. Actually, medical examination and reports are key to establishing the cause of death and how to classify that form accordingly. What is natural death? It refers to death that is caused by solely disease or natural processes. How about accidental death? It is an unnatural death that comes from an unintentional happening. For example, accident by transport, drug abuse, drowning, fall from a height, fire, and so on. How about homicide? It is death resulting from the action of a person that leads to the death of another. And suicide? That is a self-inflicted injury motivated by a desire to cause death to oneself. Let us take note that there is a very strong correlation between the forms of death and the experience that the dead person goes through during and after death. So all death, though we call them death, are not the same in terms of the experience that the person will go through during and after. That is to say, the experiences that the dead person has are not the same in all instances. It differs, whether it's a natural death or unnatural death. Let us talk more about natural death. When the couple are expecting a baby and they have the means, you can see the great preparations they make to welcome the child. And what are some of the examples? Taking childbirth classes, going for medical checkups and reviews, buying clothing for the baby in advance, planning for labor, psyching older children, if they have them, to receive a newcomer, and preparing associates and friends, or building the community of well-wishers. Then the pain and joy of giving birth takes place. The glamour of adoring and naming ceremony follows, and in happiness too. For sure, it's always a joyful moment. Yet, when the time is up for a person to depart this physical world, which is the most important thing for the spirit in its journey through matter, that moment is laced with activities of the living that cause the dead grief, pain, and fear. Because, unlike the preparations made towards birth, no such preparations are made for the transition into the invisible worlds. Meanwhile, this transition into the spiritual realm is actually birth into that world, whereas birth into the physical world is death in the spiritual world. To a very large extent, there is an inverse relationship between the physical world and the spiritual world. Death here is birth over there, and birth here is death over there. And when we are talking about it, it is in terms of consciousness. So death in the physical world is birth in the spiritual world, and vice versa. We ask on this platform that Is this passing from physical life made pleasant by love and good wishes of friends? In many instances, the answer is no. We don't make this passing over of the living into the spiritual realm a pleasant thing by certain conduct. I will be looking at all that. The greatest of all journeys into the home of the spirit is still attended by grief. The way is covered with fears and washed with tears. The traveler, who is the dead person, is not attended by the love and joy which awaited his or her entrance into the physical life at birth. The spirit, therefore, enters into a new life unprepared, unhappy, because of the grief and wrong actions of people who have no spiritual knowledge about the implications of their actions. And we are going to explain this into detail. Why certain actions of the living are actually suffering for the dead person. Once again, we ask, what is humanity doing to prepare everybody for the change called death? Is it not about time that humanity has a science of death in place? Just as we have for birth, why don't we also have a science of death in place? Let us note that it is by the physical body and this physical world that humanity must learn to become a creator like the Father in heaven. They are tools. The physical world and the physical body that we are using as spirits is or are means by which the spirit is learning to master the lessons of life so that we, the spirit, can be recognized by the Father in heaven as sons. It is the spirit that will be recognized as sons, not this physical body. Let us go to Genesis chapter 1 verse 26, where we read, "And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." But there comes a time that the physical body becomes tired, wears out, and it is necessary the spirit be given a time to assimilate the experiences gained on earth. Therefore, God made it such that the spirit should step out of the unsuitable old dense body and function in its spiritual body. So it becomes of us for the natural phenomenon to play itself out. Nobody can escape it. Once you are a human being, you will go through that process, just as you were given birth to. So the sower, the human being, the sower, reaps at last the good and evil of his or her action on earth. The harvest time has come, when the skeleton specter of death arrives with the scythe and hourglass. And we show the picture of the skeleton specter of death arriving with the scythe and then hourglass. The skeleton symbolizes the relatively permanent part of the body, and the scythe represents the fact that this permanent part, which is about to be harvested by the spirit, is the fruitage of the life now drawing to a close. So what is being harvested depends on the work that has been done, and the harvest time is death. The hourglass in his hand indicates that the hour does not strike until the full course has been run in harmony with the unchanging nature's law. When that moment arrives, when the moment of death arrives, when the moment that harvest must be made of the life that we have led on earth, a separation of the material bodies and spiritual bodies take place. A separation takes place. The silver cord, which was tied by angels before birth, so that the spirit does not leave the material body during life on earth, is about to be loosened by Satan for the spirit to be released back to its home in the spiritual realm. The home of the spirit is not this physical world. It is in the spiritual world. So when the time comes for the spirit to go back to its home, the silver cord is cut. The dying person lays on bed, frail and seemingly disinterested in the things of this world. Of course, when the time comes, nobody seems to be interested again in the things of this world, these material things. No. Be it the rich or the poor, the privileged or the underserved, the strong or the weak, the proud or the humble, the saint or the sinner, the loved or the hated. When the time comes, everybody will go. When the hour ticks closer, at a point, the dying person begins to feel or to sense impacts from the spiritual world more than before. If you have stayed close to a dying person, you will note this. He or she may see dead relatives, friends, and loved ones, and at times can be heard talking to them. Some in joyful expression and others in painful expression. Those around the dying person may see that some strange things are happening, but because their spiritual eyes are not opened, they lack comprehension of the situation. Indeed, many changes are taking place in the biological system of the dying person. Breathing becomes harder and shallow because the vital body which sustains this physical body is undergoing changes to leave the body. Through the vagus or cranial nerve, nerve 10, the backside, and the joint between the parietal and occipital lobes in the skull, the spirit eventually leaves the body. It may be a soft or violent departure of the spirit, one with vigorous body movements. At death, the vital body, the desire body, and the mental bodies leave the physical body through the head, the Golgotha. And you may refer to our lecture number 2, which talks about the various bodies of a human being. It is the same route, that is the head, which the spirit uses anytime we go out of the body consciously, what we may call positive initiation. The same route, the head, the Golgotha. The main point is that during sleep and initiation, the silver cord is never broken. It remains, or they remain, connected to the material and spiritual bodies of the living, unlike death. To make it clearer, let us look at the following: the difference between sleep and death. During sleep, the spirit leaves the body through the head, just as in death. The spirit withdraws with the higher vehicles, the desire body and the mind. The withdrawal is via the head, and it is the same during death. Ordinarily, the spirit does not leave with the vital body during sleep. During sleep, often the vital body remains with the body. In case the vital body should leave the spirit, that will be death. This vital body interpenetrates the physical body during sleep, and in waking hours, the vital body interpenetrates the physical body when we are asleep or when we are moving about. Unlike after death, where the vital body does not interpenetrate the body any longer, but hangs over the dead body. The silver cord or the seed atom is not broken during sleep, unlike in death. Retrospection of the day's activities goes with sleep, while review of life records without any feelings attached takes place at death. That is the difference. In the daytime, when we go through our day's activities and we are about to sleep and we do retrospection, it is about the day's activities. That goes with sleep. Unlike death, during death, the retrospection is about a whole life's activities, no more a day's activities. The spirit can re-enter the body during sleep, but at death, it can never re-enter the body. Death is important for the spirit. For the spirit, it is death that is most important. And for sleep, it is most important for the physical body. Sleep is a rest period for the spirit to recharge the tired physical body. Death is a time of rest and recuperation so that the spirit may draw from earthly experiences for greater soul power. The spirit has now reached a period on the path of evolution where it must take time for the assimilation of the lessons of life. And these lessons the spirit learns while functioning in the world of matter, the physical world. Prior to departure of the spirit, before the spirit eventually leaves the body, the heart stops beating because there is a rupture of the seed atom, which is linked to the silver cord in the heart. So the seed atom and the silver cord are linked. Before the spirit leaves the body, the first thing that happens is for the heart to stop beating because there is a rupture, there is a break in the seed atom. In Ecclesiastes chapter 12 verse 6 and 7, we read, "Or ever the silver cord be loosed, or the golden bowl be broken, or the pitcher be broken at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern. Then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return unto God who gave it." Here we have the silver cord mentioned in the Bible. Instead of the vital body remaining with the physical body as is the case during sleep, at death, the vital body also leaves the physical body, together with the desire and the mental bodies. For the spirit's work in the physical world with this physical body has come to an end. The vital body has a different work to do. It is no longer called upon to keep these physical atoms in health, so it leaves. The spirit, which is leaving its earthly prison, takes with it its most cherished belonging. The most cherished belonging of the spirit is the seed atom, the only part of the physical which cannot die and which it brings back with it at each earth life. The seed atom is most important. This permanent seed atom has been used as a nucleus for a physical body ever since the spirit possessed a physical vehicle. The Bible refers to this seed atom in Revelation chapter 20 verse 12. And we read, "And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were opened. And another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works." The seed atom is described as books in the Bible. A permanent seed atom does not mean that the physical atom itself is used, but the forces which flow through the seed atom. It is like the information or the records that are on the pen drive. So it is the information in the seed atom that is permanent, that is taken along. Those forces remain with the ego or the spirit through rebirth after rebirth until it has finished its evolution in the physical world. So the information contained in the seed atom is what is always used. Then the forces will be transferred to the seed atom of the vital body, which will become the permanent seed atom of the next period. For now, we have the seed atom in the heart for the physical. When the time is due, the records in the seed atom in the heart will be played into the seed atom of the vital body, That is what we are talking about here. And we show a picture of how this connection is done. The connection is the link between the seed atom and the silver cord. You can see the silver cord over here of the physical body located in the heart and connected to that of the vital body in the solar plexus, and then also connected to the desire body in the liver, and finally connected to the fourth body, which is the mind, in the frontal sinus. When the heart stops beating, it is only part of the dying process. When the heart stops beating, it is only part of the dying process. The person is only partially dead. Let us not take it that that is the end of it all. At that moment, the person is only partially dead. So let us not think once the heart stops beating, the person is dead. And that is called clinical death. The person is clinically dead. When that happens, when the heart stops beating, there is no circulation of blood, nor breathing. Very critical activities of precious importance to the spirit are, however, taking place within that period. So let us not think that when the heart stops beating, that is the end of it all. Very, very serious activities are taking place. The ego, or the spirit, with its three bodies, namely the vital body, the desire body, and the mental body, they float above the head of the dense body for roughly 3.5 days. Therefore, it does not mean that when the heart stops beating, then all activities of the spirit are over. No. For 3.5 days, the spiritual bodies are floating above the head of the dead person. And some cells, especially in the head area, are still responsive to impact. In Revelations chapter 11 verse 9, we are told, "And they of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies 3.5 days, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves." That period, that 3.5 days period, when the heart stops beating, when the person is clinically dead, is the most precious time for the person who has just died. There should be quietness in the house of death. Why are we saying that? The 3.5 days when the heart stops beating are the most important for the person who has just died. We will explain. The vital body is the vehicle used immediately after death to transfer the impressions of the seed atom in the heart to the seed atom of the desired body. During this work, the seed atom that is connected to the silver cord is ruptured, but the silver cord has not snapped. Until the silver cord breaks, the person somehow is still sensitive to external impacts. The ego, or the spirit, is still conscious of its vehicles, feeling and suffering to some extent when the body is disturbed or hurt or mishandled. When the higher vehicles have left the dense body, they are still connected with it by a slender, glistening, silvery cord, shaped much like two figure sixes, reversed, one upright and one horizontally placed. The two connected at the extremities of the hooks. They are connected, one at the top, one down. They are connected. One end is fastened to the heart by means of the seed atoms, and it is the rupture of the seed atom which causes the heart to stop beating. And we show a picture of the silver cord, how the higher aspect and the lower aspect are connected. At the joint, we have the seed atom, and the point of separation is where both sixes meet. And there we have the seed atom. The silver cord itself is not snapped until the panorama of the life lived by the deceased contained in the vital body has been reviewed. The dead person will have to review the information contained in the seed atom. The silver cord snaps at the point where the sixes unite, half remaining with the dense body and the other half with the higher vehicles. From the time the cord snaps, from the time that the silver cord breaks, the dense body is finally dead. What may be said to be biologically dead. So, there is a difference between clinically dead and biologically dead. And we have said that when a person is clinically dead, it refers to only the stoppage of the heartbeat as well as circulation of blood and breathing. But for 3.5 days, the dead person is still sensitive to certain external impacts, in the sense that the higher vehicles, the vital body, the desire body, and the mind, they float over the dead body. And within that 3.5 days, the records of the lives that the person led in this life are being played, are being taken away into the next higher bodies of the dead person. So within that moment, it is critical for quietness to prevail in the area of death. When the seed atom has broken in the heart and the individual has been released from his or her dense body, a moment of highest importance comes to the spirit or the ego. It is a great crime. It is actually a crime against the departing soul or the departing person to give expression of loud grief and lamentations, for it is just then engaged in a matter of supreme importance and a great deal of value of the past life, depending upon how much attention the dead person can give to that matter, and that matter is to pick the records of the life that he or she has led. We keep repeating this because it is the most important thing for every human being, taking along the records of the life that you have led on earth. It is also a crime against the dying person to administer stimulants which have the effect of forcing the higher vehicles back into the dense body with a jerk, thus imparting a great shock. Yes, we have medicine that can be administered to a dying person to recall the higher vehicles back into the dense body, but that is not the best. It is actually a crime against the person who is dying. It is no toucher to pass out, but it is a toucher to be dragged back into the dense body to continue to suffer. It is also of great pain to the dead when the body is quickly buried after death, because the body will be mishandled, and the mishandling of the body is a disturbance to the picking of the records of the dead person. During Panorama, during the review of life, the spirit is engaged in reviewing the sins of its past life, which have been impressed on the permanent seed atom in the heart, as we have already said. These impressions, these pictures, these records have been left on the seed atom through the blood. It's the blood that carries all this information, and they are recorded in the seed atom. The Bible teaches that the spirit is in the blood. Without the blood, the spirit cannot function. That is to say, the blood is the direct vehicle of the spirit. The whole of the life led passes before the sight of the dead person, like a panorama, like watching a cinema or video. The events being presented in reverse order. The pictures that flow before the perception of the dead person, those pictures are played in a reverse order. The incidence of the days immediately preceding death comes first, and so on, back through manhood or womanhood to youth, to childhood, and infancy. Everything is seen by the Spirit, all those records, when they are played back in a reverse order. In lecture number 15, we talked about the spiritual exercise of retrospection. So if we perform this exercise each night in our lifetime as we live now, we will facilitate the review process after death and achieve results faster than if we do not do it at all. So the dead person stands as a spectator before his own panorama, his own records of life. He or she sees the pictures as they pass, and they impress themselves upon his or her higher vehicles. But she or he has no feelings about them at that time. That is reserved until the time when the dead person enters the desire world, which is the world of feeling and emotion. And we have talked about the desire world in our presentations. At present, the dead person is only in the etheric region of this physical world. So when a person dies immediately, the person is in the etheric region of this physical world. This panorama, a review of your own life records, lasts from a few hours to several days, depending upon the length of time the person could keep awake if necessary. So if the dead person can keep awake for a longer period, it is most likely the dead will review his or her own experiences in a longer time. Some people can keep awake only 12 hours or even less. Others can do so upon occasion for a number of days, but as long as the person remains awake, this panorama lasts. When the spirit is disturbed during the transfer, the impressions, the records are dimly etched. They are not properly etched. They are not properly transferred. And the spirit, in returning to rebirth in the next embodiment, does not bring with it intense sense of conscience as it would have done if the etching had been clear-cut. Because in the desire world, the spirit was not able to feel remorse for the wrong things that it has done on earth, or to be joyful over the good things that it has done, or because it did not have the opportunity to impress strongly on itself those records, or those records had been disturbed by the living, so the spirit could not intensely, strongly transfer those records. Noise and mishandling of the body immediately after death distort and prevents the dead from transferring records of its good and bad actions which it must face after death in order to strengthen conscience and virtue when it comes back to rebirth. Accuracy of records is important for reformation and spiritual enhancement of the spirit. Let us look at the panorama of life. And we say that the panorama of life is the ego or the spirit's review of past life without any feelings attached. This panorama has to be fully etched into the desired body. At the end of it, the silver cord breaks, and the spirit, the dead person, is free from its earthly house. Once the silver cord breaks, the dead person or the spirit is free of this dense body. It wouldn't use it anymore. That is to say, when the endurance of the vital body has reached its limit, it collapses, just as we fall asleep. So when the records are played, depending on the endurance of the ego or the spirit or the dead person, then the vital body collapses. And that collapse is just like how we also fall asleep. During physical life, When the spirit or ego controls its vehicles, this collapse terminates the waking hours. We fall into sleep. After death, the collapse of the vital body terminates the panorama and forces the person to withdraw to the next world, which is the desire world. And as we said, the panorama on the average lasts from a few hours to 3.5 days. Those 3.5 days are very, very important. And we said that the length of time is dependent upon the strength of the vital body of the person. So there is no fixed period that 1 hour, 2 hours, this particular person will have finished with the panorama. No, it depends on the dead person and the strength of the vital body to stand, watching its own dates. Some persons can last for 50, 60, and 70 hours before they fall down exhausted in this review. But others, a few hours, and they have collapsed. They couldn't review their own life experiences. The person stands as a spectator while the pictures succeed one another in reverse order. We said in this presentation there will be some repetition in order to deepen certain facts. And we are repeating again that after death, immediately after death, the dead person stands as a spectator while watching the pictures succeed one another in reverse order from death to birth, so that the dead person sees first the happenings just prior to death, what happens immediately before death. Then the years of manhood or womanhood, the youthful stage, the childhood stage, and the infancy stage follows until it terminates at birth. So it's really playing back all the way to birth. The person, however, has no feeling about them at that time. So when the panorama is being played, there is no feeling at all attached to it. The object is merely to etch the panorama into the desired body. The object of these first pictures is to etch, is to transfer the records to the desired body, which is the seat of feeling, and from that impress, the feeling will be realized when the spirit goes to the next world, which is the desired world. Note that, we are repeating again, note that the intensity of feeling realized depends upon the length of time consumed in the process of etching and the attention given to the transfer by the dead person. If undisturbed for a long period by noise and hysteria, a deep, clear-cut impress will be made upon the desired body. The dead person will feel the wrong done more keenly in purgatory and be more abundantly strengthened in good qualities in the first heaven. So, making the place of death quiet and peaceful is the most important way we can help the dead, especially 3.5 days after death. Although the experience will be lost in a future life, the feelings will remain as the still, small voice. This voice will speak in no vague and uncertain terms. It will impel the person beyond naysaying, forcing him or her to desist from what caused pain in a life before, and compel him or her to do what is good. Therefore, the panorama passes backwards so that the ego or spirit sees first the effects and then later the underlying causes. That is why these pictures are played backwards. The break of the silver cord. Let us talk about it. As said, the silver cord breaks at the point where the two sixes unite. 6, 2 unite. The same withdrawal of the higher bodies occurred as during sleep, but with the difference that although the vital body returns to the dense body, it does not interpenetrate the dense body anymore. Have you noticed that the beard, those who have it, hair, nail, and some other parts of the dead still grow for some time after death? Portion of the two lower ethers that maintain the body are somehow still active for some time. So immediately a person dies, portion of the two lower ethers of the vital body still remain with the dead person and they grow. You may wonder, how come the hair is still growing and all that? It's all because portion of the lower part of the vital body remain with the dead person. That is why those parts still grow. The beard, hair, and nail, among others, are the products of the vital body. And anyone who has access to them is in possession of a very sensitive portion of the dead person. Those parts contain what we call residual magnetism, to be used for good or evil, depending on the nature of the person who has it. If the corpse is buried, the vital body remains floating over the grave, decaying synchronously with it. That is to say, when the body is buried, the vital body, and we are referring to the two lower ethers, they disintegrate slowly at the same time as the dense body. So that when, for instance, an arm has decayed in the grave, the etheric arm of the vital body, which hovers over the grave, also disappears, and so on until the last vestige of the body is gone. And it takes so many years for that disintegration to take place. The cemetery is a nauseating sight to the one who has spiritual eyes. The residual magnetism of the lower ethers, they float over the grave, which distracts the spirit from its activities in the invisible world. It binds the dead somehow to the earthy element. Also, the continuous grieving visits to the grave, pouring of libation or powder or burning incense by relatives and well-wishers, all these things are distractions to the dead. That is why the body should be cremated, since cremation frees the spirit quickly. By cremation, all links with worldly things are cut. The spirit is no more distracted by residual magnetism. Even if you do what we may call necromancy, magic, divination, what have you, the spirit will never respond, because all ties or all medium to this world has been cut. You free the person to do his or her job in the spiritual world. Disposing of the dead by the rational and sanitary method of cremation restore the elements into their primordial condition without the fisher's incident to the process of burial and slow decay. How does the desired body look after death? Meanwhile, the two higher ethers of the vital body, we're talking about the reflecting and the light ethers, they merge with the desired body, which assumes the shape of the dense body to function in the higher worlds. So when a person dies, the desired body assumes the shape of the person as we know him or her in life. It may, however, appear briefly. The dead may, however, appear briefly, depending on one, intensity of the desire, and two, gathering physical materials around itself as a ghost and appear to the living. It happens. It's a fact of life, unless you don't know it. The mind of the dead person is more active than while the person was alive. And he or she could still think, move about, reason, and draw conclusions. So let us not think when the spirit drops this physical body, then automatically it has dropped the desired body, the mental body. No, the spirit still has those bodies within or with it. This is precisely where there is confusion, for the person, while he or she was alive on earth, was doubting the existence of life beyond the physical. For example, the ignorant person, the materialistic person, the moralist or the atheist, and the materialistic scientist, they can believe it when they get to the next world. They expected a complete shutdown of consciousness, feelings and emotions, movement, and all other activities they used to carry out whilst they were on earth, only to see that they are more active than before. And they could see that there is something different which they couldn't understand. A state of confusion engulfs them, and they are not easily agreeable to the fact that they are in the land of the living dead. When someone dies, people with limited vision grieve over this change. To them, it appears as a final parting of a loved one. But the dead has only left the worn-out body, which disintegrates. He or she is permitted to function in a finer and a more ethereal body, one in which he or she is not limited by distance, nor can physical matter obstruct his or her progress. The dead don't experience that at all. They can go anywhere. They can do anything, except they cannot take physical body. This is the spiritual body, of which Paul tells us in 2 Corinthians, a building not made with hands, eternal in the heavens, because the dead now is clothed in the spiritual body. In this vehicle, our loved ones can visit us. And while we, in our blindness, may not have the spiritual eyes with which we can see them, yet they are, nonetheless, very near to us. They are gone physically, but in their spiritual bodies. They are still interested in our welfare, no two ways about it. And when we need them, they do not fail us, but to some extent. There are some instances where they cannot do anything. They encourage and help us more often than we realize, though by our grief we may hinder their progress in this new spiritual life to which they have been called. At the time of passing, the dead feels as if bloated out or see himself or herself big, and also in many places at the same time. Actually, it is not so. Rather, the sense centers in the desired body have become more activated such that many impressions are coming at the same time. That is why the dead at the point of death feel so bloated out and see many things and be at many places at the same time. The spiritual perception centers are becoming more active. It is also said that darkness befalls them, but it is not actually darkness. Rather, the bodies are getting adjusted to the new higher vibrations, just like the way we are blinded by strong light for a moment when lighted upon. Having come out of the body by death, the dead can perceive clearer, move faster, think faster, because death to the physical body or the brain is not death to the mind, the fourth material body of the spirit. Remember, the dead person is now clothed in the desired body, containing the two higher ethers of the vital body and the mind. The dead can feel, perceive, remember, and so on. What changed is the dense or chemical matter that is no longer used or needed in the next world. Feeling is not in this physical body. Feeling is in the desired body. What it cannot do, what the dead cannot do, is to directly use physical body for expression as the living does on earth. The dead is now in the etheric region, and later will go to the desired world of this earth planet. The dead is not gone beyond this earth planet. It is still attached to this earth planet, because the earth planet also has bodies which the dead lives in. The laws over there, the laws in the spiritual realm, are not the same as the laws of this material world in which we live. For example, in the spiritual world, where the dead goes, there is no gravity. time does not exist, distance does not exist, and so on. The atoms over there are lighter and not stationary. They move in various directions. They levitate and they gravitate anyhow. The spiritual worlds are inhabited by the forces of angels, human beings, animals, elementals, demons, and what have you. They are all in the next world. Things are real to the inhabitants there, just as things are real to us here, because the bodies and worlds match all are the same. When you sleep, in your sleep, things are real to you, even though you do not use this physical body. It is the same thing about the dead. Because it is a different world, because the spiritual realm is a different world and has its own laws, the dead will have to be taught, or the dead will have to adjust. But most often, many of them, for some time, never knew that they were dead. The reason being that they can still see themselves. They can move, they can do whatever they want to do, except they cannot take physical body. But they hardly know that they don't have physical body. In such a case, how well will it be to tell somebody in that world that the person is dead? The person will not believe it, because he or she can do whatever he or she wants to do, except cannot take physical body. So, rationally, how can a living dead, someone who is dead here, but still sees himself, herself living in the other world, accept that he or she is dead? Hardly. But let us take note that death does not transform who we are. If you are a dishonest person here on earth, over there too, you will be dishonest. If you are the argumentative type, nothing will change. You still be who you are. You still do your arguments over there. It is for this reason that the living should have spiritual knowledge. As we are alive now, we need to have spiritual knowledge about the afterlife so that we can facilitate our own journey after death. We must have knowledge about the afterlife so that we can do the right thing to facilitate the movement of those who are already dead. Otherwise, we by our actions will frustrate them. We could have a day of prayers or devotional services to offer prayers, to dedicate time, telling the dead to adjust properly in the spiritual world. And that is most beneficial to them than going to the tomb or the grave and pouring libation, making sure that you burn incense, chanting at the grave. No, it's only a distraction. But when we have a day of prayers and we have devotional services to think and wish them well so that they can adjust in that world, it is most beneficial to them in the spiritual world. Otherwise, they will still be here, attached to the physical world, living with their low materialistic desires. Of course, they can still perceive the physical world. They can still see us. In fact, they have higher rate of vibration. Their perception is higher than what we have using our physical eye, except they cannot function in the physical world. They become more alive than they were while living physically on earth. The difference is that they no longer are connected directly to the physical body. That they don't have. They cannot use it anymore and cannot be with us physically. If the dead tries to hold something physical, the hand will go through it because it's like wind. They don't have physical body. Thought are things over there. For example, if a person died out of a wound, that person will still be having that consciousness and behaving like he or she is still with the wound, unless he or she is taught to use the mind and change his or her condition. Instantly, the wound will disappear and the person be made whole. That is how it works. In the desire world, thought overcomes, impresses the desired stuff in there. Because there is no gravity, The dead, not knowing that there is no gravity in that world, begins to walk like the way we do physically over here. But that is not the way it works out in the spiritual realm. There, people simply float in the air. So, the newcomer has to be taught how to glide over there, not walk, because there is no gravity, but you glide as you float in the air. Time is not there. It doesn't exist. All forms are so plastic that they easily interpenetrate one another at all times. And there is no danger whatever of losing one's identity. You still see yourself as you are. And a chair like this, millions of beings can sit on it because each interpenetrates the other without losing self-identity. In the few hours after death, the spiritual body is more dense. Please let us take note that a few hours after death, the spiritual body is more dense than at any other time, during which it is easier for the dead to manifest himself or herself to friends, siblings, and other people, regardless of the time and the distance. Because the spiritual body is more dense, the dead can manifest. Let us also take note. Upon entrance into the desire world, the dead has the seed atoms, the records of the dense body, the vital body, in addition to the desire body and that of the mind. So the seed atom for all these four material bodies that the spirit is using, all those records are still with the dead. Similarly, the silver cord connects all of those records, snapping at the end of each life. In the chemical region, for instance, where we are, and the etheric region of the physical world, and the desire world, and the world of thought. So all those four worlds, the seed atom of all of them are still with the dead person. The records are still there. And we show once again this diagram that we had earlier shown, how the seed atom and the silver cord are connected to the various bodies of a human being. This is the way they are linked. The main thing linking all of them, the silver cord. And within the silver cord, we have the seed atom, the recorder. Where are the dead? By now, we should know where the dead are, but we'll talk about it again. Immediately, those whom we call dead do not usually go away from the house where they have lived until quite a long time after the funeral. They stay in the familiar rooms and move about among us, although they are unseen by us. Of course, when their time comes to go into the first heaven, there is the first heaven, there is the second heaven, and there is the third heaven. So when their time comes for them to move to the first heaven, they do not remain any longer in our houses, but very often they visit them. So when they move to the first heaven, they only visit their homes. They do not stay so long as they do immediately after the funeral. When in time they enter the second heaven, they are no longer conscious of the physical world, in the sense of having homes, or friends, or relatives, and so on. In the second heaven, they forget everything. Just as we will sleep, dream, and forget our dreams. When they get into the second heaven, a similar thing happens to them. They don't even know that they were ever in this physical world. Remember, in Ecclesiastes chapter 9 verse 5, we read, "For the living know that they shall die, but the dead know not anything, neither have they any more a reward, for the memory of them is forgotten." So when we get to the second heaven, we forget everything. That is the way God has made it, because over there we drop the mind. Just as the spirit drops the physical body, in the second heaven going, the spirit also drops the mind. So we don't remember anything. In the second heaven, the dead are looked upon as nature forces for the time being, for they work upon this earth and humanity, ourselves, in the very same manner as the nature forces do. Of course, the nature forces, they do not have human embodiment. And the dead person in the second heaven helps in reconstructing this earth planet and working upon us. We'll look at that into details when we present the lecture on the second heaven. Unless a person had true initiation in life whilst we are alive, before dying, the person cannot enter the earth planet. So the dead, unless the person has initiation, cannot enter into the earth planet, but float above it, journey through the various worlds that extend beyond the surface of the planet. While the dead are close to us and see us, we do not see them. When they speak to us, we do not hear them. It is all because we don't have our spiritual eyes open, nor spiritual ears opened. And our situation can be likened to Jeremiah chapter 5, verse 21, which says, "Hear now this, O foolish people, and without understanding, which have eyes and see not, which have ears and hear not." That is our situation. Generally, the journey of the dead is through etheric region, purgatory, first heaven, second heaven, and third heaven before rebirth. That is the journey of the dead. The journey of the spirit in the other spiritual bodies or vehicles. That journey takes the dead person through the etheric region, purgatory, first heaven, second heaven, and third heaven. Then the spirit is reborn. And let us look at this diagram, how it describes the life and death cycle. The dark arc is talking about the spiritual world because we do not really have consciousness over there. You can see to the extreme right the various worlds. The physical world, also comprising the etheric region or the vital body. And then the next world is the desire world. The other one is the world of thought, divided into the world of abstract thought and the world of concrete thought. We said earlier on that the evolution of humanity is being carried out in 3 worlds out of the 7 worlds, and this is the picture of it. You can see that in the physical world, we have the life on earth, and we also have the ethers, the etheric region. And then when you look at the desire world, you can see the first heaven and purgatory located over there. And then when you move to the region of concrete thought, you can see the second heaven located there. And when you move to the region or the world of abstract thought, you also see the third heaven over there. We'll explain this in our next lecture. We talked about natural death. Now we are going to talk about unnatural death. There is natural death and there is also unnatural death. No two ways about it. Let us take note. When the ego or the spirit, with the help of higher beings, first built the archetype for its coming body before coming to material birth, the ego or the spirit instills into that archetype a life that will last for a certain number of years. Before we are born, in the spiritual world, the spirit builds a copy of itself, a living copy, which we call archetype. That archetype is instilled into the number of years the spirit is going to spend in this physical world. These archetypes, they are hollow spaces, and they have a singing, vibratory motion, which draws the material of the physical world into them and sets all the atoms in the body vibrating in tune with the seed atom. The seed atom is key because it is connected with the archetype, and the vibration of the archetype impacts the seed atom. And the seed atom is like a tuning fork, and it gives the pitch, the vibration of all atoms, all cells in the body. So the seed atom is the original atom that gives vibration to all the atoms and the cells in our body. At the time when the full life has been led on earth, the vibrations in the archetype cease. The seed atom is withdrawn. The death body goes to decay, and the desire body, wherein the ego functions in purgatory and the first heaven, takes upon itself the shape of the physical body. As we said earlier on, when the person dies, the desire body takes the shape of the physical body, but it is not dense body. It looks very much like the person. Then the dead person commences work of expiating, of removing evil habits and misdeeds in purgatory and assimilating the good things that he has done on earth in the first heaven. That is the natural path. When a person dies a natural death, this is the way it goes. This is the natural condition when the course of nature is undisturbed. What the person has chosen in the spiritual world before coming down, when that is not disturbed, this is the way it runs. But somebody who commits suicide, that person's case is different, and it is a serious case. That person has taken away the seed atom, but the hollow archetype still keeps on vibrating. So when the person commits suicide, the archetype, the original copy of the body built in the spiritual world before the spirit came to this physical world, is still there and is still vibrating. Meanwhile, the person has taken away the seed atom by killing himself or herself. Meanwhile, the archetype is still there, working. Therefore, such a dead person feels as if he or she were hollowed out and experiences a gnawing feeling inside that can best be likened to the pangs of intense hunger or toothache to the whole body. As we said, the desired body takes the shape of the physical body after death. So when somebody commits suicide, it's a serious thing. The archetype in the spiritual world is still there, and the desired body of the person will feel so much pain. If the person has, let's say, 20 years more, it means that for 20 years, the person will be feeling this pain in the spiritual world. Material for the building of a dense body is all around. But seeing that he or she lacks the gauge of the seed atom, it is impossible. It is simply impossible to assimilate that matter and build it into the body. So the person cannot use that matter. And it's a serious thing. This dreadful hollowed out feeling lasts as long as his or her ordinary life should have lasted on earth. Thus the law of cause and effect teaches that person, the one who has committed suicide, that it is wrong to play truant from the school of life, and that it cannot be done with impunity. You cannot cheat on God. No way. It can never happen. Then in the next life, when difficulties come, that person will remember the sufferings of the past. It is the spirit that is doing that, which resulted from suicide, and go through those turbulent moments in life. But those turbulent moments gives a lot of experience and enables us to strengthen our soul quality if we do the right things. How about death by fire? What happens? We have looked at the death by suicide. How about fire? What happens? Where a person is burnt to ashes in death, the records contained in the seed atom are lost. The dead person is deprived from reviewing those records at that moment. Hence, the higher beings, as we ever said, human beings are not by themselves. They are higher beings directing us, except they do not interfere with our free will. So those higher beings guiding humanity, they guide that person who died out of fire to come back into physical embodiment as early as possible and die as a child. By such means, the records are retrieved for the panorama to be carried out. That is how the one who died through fire is helped in later life to gather those records. And we know there are 3 places that the records are kept. The first one is the one in the heart, but there are 2 other places where the records are kept. So when the person comes back into life, then those records are made available. Then the person can now review what had happened in previous life. How about a victim of a murder and a victim of an accident? What happens to them? Spiritually, and this is factual, spiritually, there is no such thing as an accident. At least an accident that terminates in death, there is nothing like that spiritually. But because we're in the physical world, that's why we say it's an accident. No. The life of any person in its ultimate length is ordinarily decreed before birth. How long somebody can stay on earth in this physical embodiment, that life is determined in the spiritual world. But there are certain points of life where there is, as it were, a parting of the ways, where certain opportunities for growth are placed before us, which we may take or not take. Where there is failure to utilize opportunities, the life runs into a blind alley and terminates shortly afterward. That is how it is. So those who continue to miss their opportunities, you don't create the opportunities. The opportunities come to you. What you may not say is by accident, what you may not say is by chance, but it's something that has already been worked out in the spiritual world. And we are required to make use of those opportunities properly. But if we continue to misuse those opportunities, there comes a time that something will have to take place. We needed to be withdrawn from this physical world because we have abused all the opportunities that we've been given. So we need to be alert. That, however, is not usually the case in an accident. But there are many certain reasons. There are always reasons which make it desirable that the person should be cast out of his or her body in a violent manner. So there are always reasons why something like that should happen. Such a person is in the same position as all others who die. That person will go through the same process. If you die through an accident or you are murdered by somebody, but there is a little difference which we'll be explaining. Generally speaking, when the person leaves the present world as a result of an accident, he or she thinks of himself or herself as being disfigured by that accident in a certain manner, perhaps minus a leg or an arm or with a fracture in the head. It is not an inconvenience to the dead at all. He or she can still move about easily without arms or legs. Once taught, because there are always people there teaching the new arrivals, the new people who have entered the spiritual world through death. There are people who are teaching them how to adjust and live accordingly in the spiritual world. So once that person is taught to think of being whole, immediately it will happen to show the tendency of thought to shape the desired body. The case of the victim of a murder, like the case of a suicide, is different. If somebody is murdered, the person's case is different. A human being, on account of divine nature, is the only being who has the prerogative of causing disorder in the scheme of evolution. Human beings, we are. We are the only ones because we have free will. We are made in the image and after the likeness of God. And we are the only ones who can cause disorder. So, as a result, such a person may end his or her own life by an act of will. In a similar vein, such a person may end the life of another fellow before the person's time has come to leave the physical world. Such happens. The suffering of the suicide will also be the suffering of the murdered. The one who committed suicide, the process that he will go through, the process that she will go through is the same as the process that the murdered person will go through because the archetype is still alive. So the person will keep on, or the archetype will keep gathering materials which will be impossible for the dead to assimilate. We are alive because our archetypes are gathering materials which is helping us to live day by day. But when the person is dead, the archetype will still be working, but there is no physical body. The one who committed suicide, there is no physical body. And the one who was murdered, there is no physical body. But in the case of the victim of a murder, there is a difference here. And the difference is due to the intervention of the higher beings. They make sure that the one who was murdered does not suffer. Unlike the one who committed suicide, that person suffers. And how is that intervention done? You will see the one who has been murdered floating in the etheric region, in the desire world of this earth planet. But the one who has been murdered is in a state of comatose. So the person does not know of any suffering. for the length of time that he or she should naturally die. So if you kill somebody, make sure or be certain that that person will get back to you after you have also left this physical world. It will happen. That is the order. If the murderer is brought to justice and suffers capital punishment, the magnetic attraction will bring the murderer together with the victim who is floating in comatose in the desired world. That is the way it's going to happen. So if you kill somebody and the person is floating in a comatose in the spiritual realm and you also die, be certain that that dead person will be attracted to you who killed by way of the magnetism that prevails between the two of you. The victim will constantly remain before the murderer's gaze. And that is really a much more severe punishment than any which will mete out to the murderer, than any other punishment that humanity can mete out to the murderer, in the sense that the one who was killed is always before the gaze of the one who killed him or her. And let us not think that when somebody dies, that ends it. No, they are more active in the spiritual world. But the one who was murdered, being in the state of comatose, will not even know that he or she is appearing before the gaze of the one who murdered him or her. Do the dead keep watch over us? Let's look at this question. Do mothers look after their children after death? Yes. Very often, a mother who has recently passed out will watch over her children for a long time. And instances have been recorded where mothers have saved their babies, their children, from dangers. Though not knowing consciously, though they are dead, and not knowing consciously how to materialize, their love for their children and the intense fear for their safety cause the mothers in such instances to draw to themselves material so that they could be seen by their children. Therefore, it is perfectly true that they watch over their loved ones for a very long time after they have passed out. It has been often noted by persons attending the death of a mother whose children had earlier on passed out, perhaps a number of years, that at the time of dying, the mother will see the children at her bedside and may even be conversing with them. For instance, saying, hey, why? There is Johnny, and what a big boy he has grown to be, and so on. They see those children and they converse with them. The people around the bed will probably think that the dying person is in a state of hallucination, but it is not. It is real. Many people, they pass out without again seeing the physical world at that time they are dying. That is the change from our light vibrations to the higher vibrations of the desired world, and is similar to the intense light that is described as darkness that spread over the earth at the time of the crucifixion of Christ Jesus. It was actually not a darkness, but the vibration of this earth planet got increased, and our eyes, being of a lower vibration, thought it was darkness. It was increased light. With other people, it happens that the darkness leaves after a moment and the person has spiritual vision, seeing both the physical world and the desired world. And there, of course, appear the loved ones who have been attracted by the impending death, which is birth into the spiritual world. Of course, with some people, when they are about to die, the loved ones are always around, attending to the departure. Therefore, we may say that our loved ones are interested in our welfare for a long time after passing out. But it must be remembered that there is no transforming power in death. Just as you are on earth, so are you in the spiritual realms too. Do not think that by death, when you are evil over here, you'll be transformed to an angel over there. It doesn't work like that. Death doesn't change it at all. It does not give the dead any special ability to care for us. And it's of no use trying to worship them. It doesn't work like that. A bad person on earth is a bad person over there. To be factual, they have no means of influencing our affairs. They cannot interfere with our free will. So that it is not quite right to look upon the dead as guardian angels. No, it doesn't work like that. They are merely interested spectators, except in a few specific instances where an intense love enables them to perform some slight service in case of great need. That is what they can do. And the way they perform that service is different. That service, however, will never take the form of adding to our spiritual growth. The dead cannot add to our spiritual growth. But it's more like in the nature of warning us of a danger ahead. That they can do. Warning us of a danger ahead. But they will not come and change it for us. The next for us to look at is, how do the dead appear? How are they dressed? Do they dress as we do here? It is possible for the dead to form by their thoughts any article of clothing they desire. By the use of the mind, they can form any type of dress they want to wear. They usually think of themselves as being clothed in the conventional dress of the country in which they lived prior to their passing into the desired world. And therefore, they appear so clothed without any particular effort of thought. So when a person dies, depending on the culture in that locality, the person sees him or herself like that automatically, because that is the mindset. But when they desire to obtain something new, when they are used to the laws of the spiritual realm, and they now desire to have something new, an unusual article of clothing, they want a new dress, a different dress. Naturally, they have to use their willpower to bring that thing into existence. And such an article of clothing will last as long as the person thinks of himself or herself as being clad in that apparel. That is the way it works. Over there, thought are things. The things that they think about, they are the ones that happen. Sometimes, those who are very plump in this physical world, they want to appear more slim. And those who are very thin want to appear as if they had more flesh. This change or transformation is not permanently successful because of the archetype. We have all built our archetypes. Once the archetype is there, you cannot definitely change it, but temporarily you can be in a different form. The extra flesh put on by a thin person or the quantity taken off by a plump person does not stay permanently. After a while, the person who was originally thin returns to the original stature, while the person who tries to take off flesh finds himself or herself putting it back. And then they have to go through the same process anew. So once the person is restored to the original status, and the person wants to come back to the new stature that he or she wants, that will have to be repeated often. It is similar with people who attempt to mold their features and change them in appearance. That suits them better than their original one. It is the same thing. So if you don't like your nose, you have an opportunity to change it, to remodel it by your thought, the way you think over there, but it will not be permanent. Do we recognize loved ones who have passed out through the gate of death? So do we recognize them in the desired world, in the spiritual realm, just as they were here physically? When we go there, are we going to recognize them as we used to know them here? The answer is yes. Certainly, we will do that. When the person passes out of the body, he or she is exactly the same as before. There is no difference. The only change is that the person has no physical body. As he or she retains in consciousness a picture of himself or herself as on earth, the desired body will at once take the shape of the physical body, so that anyone who had known him or her on earth will do the same thing over there. Because the person maintains that thought about how he or she is on earth. So when you go there spiritually, you will see the person as he or she was on earth. Besides, it may well be known that adding anything to your body in the spiritual realm is not permanent. Death does not transform anybody beyond the original nature of the person. The dead person is the same person, mentally and morally. It is the same thing over there. We often hear people who love someone speak of the dear departed angel, even if they consider that the person was very much a devil here on earth. But they usually think it disrespectful to refer to the dead as a very bad person on earth. But the fact is that only those who are good here on earth are good over there. So it starts here. We need to do our best to be good over here, so that over there we can continue with the good. You not be good over there and be bad over here. No, you can only be good over there as well as being good over here. So if you are bad here, you'll be bad there as well. So this earth life is our platform to do good. No any other place but here. Let us do the good now. Why do some dead people become earthbound? Why is it that some people, when they die, they don't live, they still remain here on earth, doing all the things that they used to do, good or bad? Why is it so? Yes, some people die and they are still earthbound. People who are dead but remain earthbound, they have treasures on earth instead of treasures in heaven. They have all left something behind. It may not always be money. They may have other ties on earth. Somebody that they think they own, their wife, their husband, their children, or whatever, they still have interest in things of this earth. Their idea is that because I love you, you must do just that to me as I want you to do. It shouldn't be the case. So if you are over attached to these material things, it means after death, you will still be attached to them. They don't regard the person they claim they love as a person, as an individual who also has rights. They don't see it like that. Later, when such people pass out, that relationship continues, that mentality, they continue with it. They endeavor to impress their loved ones, to keep them close to themselves, and be in their company as much as they can. So those people become earthbound. People like that, who have houses, lands, cars, money, and so on, they are so much attached to them that instead of living the life that is supposed to take place after earth life, they remain bound to this earth with their interests, and they are worse off. Such a dead person, someone who dies and still earthbound, sometimes will be watching a safe where he or she is keeping a lot of cash, a lot of money. Then people will come and they will take the cash and laugh at him or her. He may try to prevent the people from taking the cash, but he has no hands to prevent anybody. They will go through his features and they will take the money that they want to take, laughing. It may be with people who have lived for society. They are interested in their jewels, their dresses, and other things. That is where their attachment is. They still love them after death, just as they loved them while they were living on earth. And they feel they cannot part with those things. Therefore, they are bound to earth as long as they continue to have that thinking and that feeling. They are attached. The best is to disown all these things of materiality, especially in old age when the time is due. We don't have to attach ourselves to materiality. Otherwise, after death, we will still be stuck to this earth planet, and the heavenly journeys that we are supposed to take will delay ourselves. If, however, people have committed crimes, they are sometimes unavoidably earthbound by association with the places where they were committed and by trying to undo the wrong that was done. And we'll look at the details of this when we get to purgatory, because everybody will have to cleanse himself or herself after death. That is the way God has done it. You have to cleanse yourself, and we'll look at it in our next lecture when we talk about purgatory. So if we free ourselves from all earthly ties, then we are like the ripe kernel falling out. There is nothing attached to us anymore. If we are free from all earthly ties, whether financial, personal, or whatever, we will not be earthbound after death. The point is, we should not be earthbound after death. We are supposed to undertake the heavenly journey. But so long as we keep attaching ourselves to this materiality, we delay our own progress, because there are lessons to learn even in the spiritual worlds after death. Let us summarize and conclude on what this lecture has been. We said that there is natural death and unnatural death. They impact natural death and unnatural death. They impact what the dying person goes through during and after death. The way somebody dies influences what happens to the person during and after death. The first 3.5 days after clinical death are the most important periods for the dead. The life records in the seed atom are being transferred into the desired body or the spiritual body. As such, there should be no noise or disturbance around the place of the dead. And we are saying the 3.5 days are critical for that. Burial immediately after a person dies deprives the dead from a successful review of the life lived or etching of the life records into the desired body. So burial immediately after death is not conducive, is not convenient for the dead. Neither should there be embalming or cremation of the dead within the 3.5 days. Otherwise, the life records will be distorted. They will be lost. That will deprive the dead from reaping fully what he or she has sown in this material world. After the records have been etched into the spiritual body, the person becomes biologically dead. And by that, the silver cord snaps, it breaks. Cremation plays a key role in detaching the dead from residual magnetism and to be free from earthly connection. The desired body assumes the form of the dead person after death, and the desired body is not physical. The dead are still around their homes immediately after death and remain for some time after the funeral. The dead still hang around. There are laws in the land of the dead that those who pass on will have to learn and follow accordingly. Although dead, they are still alive in the lives of the loved ones who may not know it at all. Immediately after death, they are still around and very active in our lives. Those who die by unnatural means, like murder and suicide, they have to wait in the land of the dead until their archetypes collapse before they can become fully functional in that world. Thoughts are things in the spiritual realm. Do you remember our lecture number 16 that talks about the spiritual exercises of retrospection and concentration? The great benefit of concentration at death is that there is no break in the consciousness of the dying person. He or she is fully aware of coming out of the body and to enter it no more. This is unlike most dying people who have lost consciousness and only find that they are out of the body without knowing how it happened. In our next lecture, lecture number 18, we will see how retrospection helps the dead to be better off in the afterlife than most people. By continuous performance of the exercises, the individual prepares himself or herself in advance towards death. After all, death is unavoidable. We hope this lecture has been beneficial. If you have any questions or suggestions, you may post them in our comments section. In lecture number 18, under the part 3 of this topic, we will be talking about purging the dead in purgatory. We thank you and look forward to meeting you.
Filling up every space, no privacy. And silently, it could build and build until you finally see. Whoa, it's taking over, damn no closure, moving closer. No exposure, I just wanna be a loner. Some can't stay sober, looking over all this.